Welcome to this OpenUp Masterclass. Each month we invite experts to discuss their knowledge on mental well-being. And today you're watching the recording of one of these sessions. If you'd like to join us live next time, feel free to check out the OpenUp calendar for upcoming dates. Enjoy the session!
So again, my name is Rose London and I will be your host today. And we will be talking about breaking the pattern of emotional eating. This topic comes up so much, almost daily, within my one-on-one consultation. So I'm super excited to give this masterclass because I am sure that it will be very valuable for you all. And I see that it's already quite busy, also in the chat and the amount of people. So let's get started. To start off, the purpose of this session is becoming aware of your behavior and discovering new coping strategies to better manage your emotional eating behavior if you're struggling with that. What we will learn in this session, what you will learn in this session, is to begin with what is emotional eating. Maybe you have an idea about what emotional eating is, but maybe you don't know exactly what it entails. And then, of course, who does it affect? Does everybody experience emotional eating, or is it just some people, some type of people? You will discover that later on. Then why do we eat? Why do we eat as an emotional response? Why do we eat to cover our emotions? And then the question that we're all here for is, how can you manage emotional eating? To start off, I want to start with a poll, and I'm gonna answer this question later. But for now, it's just a question. Is emotional eating good or bad? Very curious about your answers. Okay, we're at 100% bad. Okay, now it's gonna change a bit. Nice to see the difference with the Dutch session that we just had, but mostly bad. Okay, thank you for your answers, and I will give you the results later on. But first, what is emotional eating? So emotional eating is a term that's used to describe overeating in a response to emotions, in which the food is expected to regulate the emotion. And emotional eating happens to everyone. I said before, like, who does it happen to? And it's actually to everyone. Everyone around you, you, me, it all happens. But emotional eating is often linked to people that are overweight or obese, or being overweight or obese as a result of it. It's not an eating disorder, but it can play a role in many eating disorders. So if you see an eating disorder as sort of the umbrella term, then emotional eating can be one of the factors that are under that umbrella. But it can also occur in people with a healthy weight. So you might not see it directly. Maybe you would not expect it with someone who is maybe slim or looks fit in your opinion, but it can also happen with those people. It's just that you don't see it directly. And maybe you didn't guess this one, but it's not always from negative emotions. So positive emotions can cause overeating as well, and is also a result of emotional eating, right? Happy emotions are also emotions. So think of, for example, a wedding or a birthday or something else that you want to celebrate. We usually do that with food. So it's a big cultural thing. And it's actually pretty normal that we do it. But why do we do it? Why do we eat emotionally? And we're going to go over different reasons. First of all, masking your emotions. So what we do when we eat out of emotion, or when we try to cover our emotions with food, is that we distract ourselves from the real source of the emotion. So think of these emotions that we usually see as bad, like stress, sadness, pain. Maybe you feel lonely. Maybe you feel misunderstood. Usually we don't want to experience these feelings. We don't want to feel these feelings. So what do? We distract ourselves. We sedate ourselves with nutrition. And that brings me to the second part. The second reason is that eating tasty food feels good. It's just nice to have good food, to have tasty food, especially when we feel bad. And to make it even worse, I want to say to make it worse, but actually eating tasty food is not bad, right? But what can make the reaction to emotional eating worse, let's say it like that, is to make foods forbidden or to restrict yourself to eat certain foods. So it will accelerate, let's say, the habit of emotional eating, and then especially into certain trigger foods that you have or that you forbid yourself. We see this even in research that there's actually a really funny research that I didn't mention in the session, but now it pops in my mind, of kids who were given M&Ms, and we all know that M&Ms have different colors. And there was only one condition. They were not allowed to eat the red M&Ms. And I think you can already guess it, that of course, eventually they wanted to eat the red M&Ms, and they ate more actually of the red M&Ms than the other M&Ms, while they exactly have the same taste, at least to my understanding. If that's different for some people, please let me know. But M&Ms all have the same taste, and they still ate more of the red M&Ms than of the other colors. So this shows that restriction makes us eat more of the foods that we forbid ourselves. And then one that is really important that we maybe don't think of straight away is that we don't want to be confronted with threatening information about ourselves or information that makes us feel uncomfortable. So we seek direct stimulus, that feeling of feeling good, right, with nutrition, rather than more meaningful levels of cognition. So let's say some self-knowledge, right, knowing why you do what you do and how to respond to that. Then another sciencey bit that I would like to cover, and on one side it's partially prevention, and on the other side it's the catalyst of restriction that I already explained a bit, but I want to dive into it a bit deeper. So at first, sleep. We see the topic sleep popping up everywhere when we talk about lifestyle, but it is because it's so important. So yes, it is a cliche, but not for good reason. Let's say it like that. Why? Is because sleep deprivation dysregulates hunger and satiety hormones. So if we link that to emotional eating, you can imagine what can happen. That if you sleep too little or the quality of your sleep is not good and dysregulates your hormones, it makes it even harder to deal with hunger and satiety. And then if you add some extra stress on top of that, it makes it harder to manage your response to it. That brings me to the second part, is that lack of sleep also increases the stress hormone. And let stress be one of the bad emotions that we feel that we usually try to solve with food. So you see that it works on different levels. So really simple tip to begin with in terms of prevention is look at your sleep routine. Like, where can you maybe improve a bit in your bedtime routine? During the day, can you go out a bit more, have some daylight? Can you build in some more moments of relaxation during the day? Can you work a bit on your sleep hygiene? Then the restriction part, I told you the example of the M&Ms, and this has been studied multiple times with very different methods. But in general, what we see is that if we put high dietary restrictions on ourselves, we have a greater need to eat when we are asked to accept our emotions. And dieting not only meaning eating in a caloric deficit to try to lose weight, but just restriction in general. Maybe you want to eat healthy and you say, I am not allowed to eat sugar, or bread is bad, so I cannot have it. What usually happens is that it becomes way more tempting to have that food just because you restrict yourself by it. So be cautious of your thoughts and beliefs that you have around food, because they can really move you in a certain direction and derail you from what you actually really want and need. And here's a more visual representation of how restriction works. So let's take a strict diet or restriction in general of a certain food type. If we do that, we feel deprived. So we feel deprivation. And usually that's not the best feeling to have. So again, it's a bad feeling that we want to cover, and you want to eat to feel better. Or you don't want it always, but you eat to feel better. Then you feel better for a while, right? I'm going to explain you later how that works. But there's a reaction there. You feel better for a while. And then what usually happens? The negative thoughts start. You feel guilty. You actually didn't want to do this. And then as a reaction to that, what I usually see and what happens very often, we restrict even more because we think the problem is that we haven't been tough enough to ourselves. So we restrict even more. We take out more food types and we're like, okay, now it's going to happen. Now it's going to work. What happens then? Again, deprivation. You want to feel better. So you eat and the circle continues. So this vicious cycle continues. We can also make the circle even shorter. When you eat to feel better, you feel better for a while. You feel negative emotions and then you go straight down to eat to feel better. So then the circle becomes even tinier and this response continues continuously. Like I said, I would explain a bit on how this reaction works in the brain. And if we look at emotional eating as a habit, how it usually starts is that we have one type of behavior, and if we repeat that often enough, that we create a habit or a habit loop. So this is a neurological loop in our brain that then repeats itself over and over again without thinking about it. So you have a trigger, let's say certain time in the day, maybe when you come home from work or when you have a break, or a certain environment, certain people that you surround yourself with, or a sound that you hear that makes your mouth water, for example, maybe the ping of the oven or whatever. Then you have a behavior as a response to it. And then something happens in the brain is dopamine gets released, so you feel good. To give an example, you come home after a stressful day at work and you reach for a chocolate bar because that just tastes so good. It feels so good. Then you feel relaxed, you feel good. So the next time when you come home from a stressful day at work, what does the brain do? It knows like, hey, last time when I came home and I was stressed, when I reached for the chocolate bar, I felt good. So we're going to repeat this. And then again, this cycle continues. And you can apply this to all different sorts of situations. So instead of really sitting with those feelings, which ask for some self-awareness, right? You go automatically to the kitchen or the cupboard and you grab yourself something tasty. I give the example of chocolate because that's my favorite, but insert anything that is a trigger for you. Not because you're hungry, but because you want to get away from that annoying feeling that you have. And what you actually avoid, to circle back to what I said in the beginning about this feeling of discomfort towards yourself, is you want to maybe don't be confronted with the thought, I cannot handle my day, or I'm weak, or I am a failure because I didn't get anything done. Or maybe even during that you're emotionally eating, I am a failure because I cannot keep myself from emotional eating. Then there's an extra layer of bad feelings on top of that, and the circle continues. So what you're looking for is something that makes you feel quickly, that makes you feel good. And even on a deeper layer can give you maybe even a feeling of safety, a feeling of trust, because when your day is already out of control, chaotic, you feel bad, you know exactly what that chocolate bar is going to give you. So no questions asked, right? You know exactly, if I eat this, this is going to happen. And every time this is going to be the same. So that can give a bit a feeling of safety, of comfort, of control, right? Everything doesn't go in the way that I want to, but this bit I can control. And it's a really easy bit, right? You have your dopamine hit, and you have that instant response. But then after that, you're usually left with worse feelings than before. So the initial stress or sadness, and on top of that, the guilt that comes with eating out of emotion. With all of that being said, I'm super curious. If you see this question, I'm an emotional eater, or this statement, to say better, I'm an emotional eater. Would you say yes or no? I'm curious what your answers are. Okay, again, yes is winning today. I see some no. Okay, interesting. Thank you. I'm gonna explain to you why I asked this question. It's because people love being consistent with their identity, and they will always try to protect it. So, my advice is to not identify yourself with being an emotional eater. Because by saying that you are something, you make it more difficult to change your behavior, because it's set in stone, right? It is the way it is. I am this. No, I am Rose. I am Rose London. But if I say I am an emotional eater, it doesn't give me the room and space to change. So I already want to invite you all now, if you answered yes, to change it into something more gentle. Like, I have the tendency to respond with nutrition to my emotions, or to try to walk away from my emotions and eat instead of that, right? Because then you're naming the behavior that you're doing instead of identifying with this identity, basically. And then, to answer the first poll, where I asked if emotional eating was good or bad, the answer is it's not always bad. It's a normal process, and actually so normal is that, biologically speaking, food elicits a parasympathetic response known as the rest and digest response, opposed to the sympathetic fight or flight response. So it makes complete sense that we do it. But then, when does it turn into bad, right? When is emotionally eating bad? It becomes problematic when it no longer has a genuinely soothing effect, or it doesn't really serve the purpose that it should serve, right? Instead, it leads to guilt, maybe even weight gain, excessive consumption of non-nutritious foods, and it moves you further away from the goal that you're trying to achieve. Because when you're stressed, you probably don't need a bar of chocolate. Like, that's not gonna solve the stress. You probably need to see, like, where is the stress coming from, and how can I fix that? How can I better manage that? And I give stress as an example, but you can fill in the blanks here as well. Like I said before, sadness, or maybe you feel frustrated. So all of these different emotions that can be at play. Now, all this being said, maybe you think, okay, that's great. Thank you for all this information, but how do I stop emotional eating? How do I do that? And to start off first is knowing that emotional eating is not about the food itself. It's about the lack of connection with yourself, with your inner world. So we return to the connection between your mind, your body, and your feelings, because that's where the true wisdom lies and where we can make that everlasting change. So we go from subconscious and we bring it to the surface, to our conscious. And there is a condition, there is a prerequisite, is that you have to create space to work on these habits. You need to create time, priority, and energy. Because if you keep focusing on other things, if you keep filling your agenda with tons and tons of stuff, I know nowadays, right, in society, we're constantly running from A to B to C to Z, and we're only on the go. This makes it really difficult to work on our habits, on habits that we really like to change. Sometimes called bad habits, right? Just things that we would rather not do. But it takes time and energy to change something. So see if you want to work on that, if you can create that for yourself, and if you can take a bit better care of yourself. Then, to go into the solution, the thing that you're going to practice with, the key points for managing emotional eating. First of all is an assignment for emotional regulation called the Wacht method. We use the Dutch letters because they sum up nicely the step-by-step, the steps that you can take step by step. Wacht basically means wait, pause. I'm going to explain you this later on, but first we're going to identify the 4 points below. Is to identify your triggers within your environment, either internally or externally. So internally can be certain emotions, right? So your inner world. What is triggering you to emotionally eat? And externally, is it certain people? Is it certain situations that you find yourself in? Is it the way that your kitchen is the layout of your kitchen, right? You open the cupboard and the first thing that you see there is a bag of chips or that bar of chocolate that I constantly bring up. Then super important for breaking habits is to set a certain condition, a non-negotiable. And this comes from psychology, where we create this, like I said, condition, this sentence where you fill in, if I do this, so if I do X, then I do Y. So for example, if I come home, can be from a stressful day, can also when you're happy, but if I come home, then I go for a 10-minute walk. Or if I come home, then I first do a 5-minute breathing exercise, for example. So instead of saying, I am not going to eat chocolate anymore when I'm come home, that doesn't work. So we really want to set in a new habit. So to change that and to really set this conditional so that you already know, yeah, if I do this, then I do that. So that you don't have to think about it anymore. Same as like, if I wake up, then I brush my teeth. Usually we don't think that so clearly, like, oh, if I wake up. No, this we do automatically because we have learned that in a certain point of time, and now we just do it without thinking about it. So try this out. Same could be, if I sit on the couch, then I eat an apple. Or if I watch my series, then I eat some cherry tomatoes, for example. So instead of just saying, hey, I'm not gonna eat Ben and Jerry's when I sit in front of the TV, try to change it with something else. Then a very important one is eating mindfully. Whatever you eat. So not only when you eat nutritious foods, but also when you eat those foods that are highly palatable, that are really tasty. When you sit down with that bar of chocolate that you really crave, that you really like make it into a moment, enjoy it to the fullest, because food is there also to enjoy. It's not only to feed our body with the nutrients, but it's also deeply cultural and it has to do with rituals, etc. Like there's so much more layers to nutrition than just feeding your body with certain nutrients. So when you do it, eat mindfully, doesn't matter what type of food. And really take a moment for it. We discussed this more in our group session, Introduction to Intuitive and Mindful Eating. So if you want to learn more about that, you're more than welcome. So I'm gonna keep this shortly for today. But basically it means being aware in this time and space. Then self-compassion, this is a thing that usually is seen as something weak or as a weakness. But I would like to invite you to practice this more if you have a hard time with this. Because I can tell you, it's not a weakness. And it's not about being super soft for yourself, like, oh, it all doesn't matter, I can make mistakes and not learn from it. The whole point is, I can make mistakes and I can learn from it. It's okay if I fail. It's okay if I fall. I just stand up and I try to do it again. And I learn from what went wrong or what didn't go in the direction that I wanted to go into. That brings me to the last part, and that is reflect. So reflect back on what you have been trying, what you have been doing, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. Of course, this is one method. Maybe you find something else that works for you. But look back at what you have done, and if it doesn't work out, apply self-compassion. You can be mad about it, sad about it. That's fine, but don't drag yourself down with this feeling. Say like, hey, okay, this happened, was not nice, but how can I do it different next time? This brings me to the exercise that I would love for you to practice with. So what you're gonna do is the wacht or the wait exercise. Next time, when you feel the tendency to eat out of emotion, you're gonna set a timer for 20 minutes. So you're gonna wait, literally. You're gonna create time and space between your impulse and your action. So that's basically the goal of the exercise. We have a handout for this exercise. So afterwards, you can find this handout and it's explained completely. And one of the conditions here as well is the goal is not to eliminate yourself or to stop yourself from eating. It's to create time and space to make a conscious decision. So it's not about I cannot have food or I'm not allowed to have food. No, I give myself 100% permission to eat if that is the thing that I truly need in this moment. So what are you going to do first? You're going to check in with yourself. What am I feeling? So for example, you feel tired. Maybe you feel hungry. Maybe you don't know what you feel. You're like, I think that I feel hungry, but I'm not quite sure. I have a tool for that as well later on, so bear with me. And maybe it's something mental. You feel restless or you feel bored, right? There's a lack of stimulus. So sit with that feeling for a bit and accept the feeling that comes up. So don't react to it immediately. Just acknowledge the feeling, sit with it. You don't have to solve it right away. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's okay. That's the whole point, right? We need to learn to sit with these emotions, to work through them. Because if we're constantly going to cover them with nutrition, now we're talking about nutrition, but for example, it could also be alcohol or cigarettes or whatever. We're sedating basically the emotion that we're feeling instead of facing it. So let it be there. Don't push it away. Then check in with yourself. What is your real need? So what do I truly need in this moment? And is this met by eating food or by something else? So for example, maybe you feel sad and you need some comfort. You need somebody to comfort you. Or you feel lonely and you need some attention. Or you feel frustrated, misunderstood, and you want someone to listen to you and you need some understanding. Like, is that need really going to be covered by that bar of chocolate or by that tub of Ben & Jerry's? That's the question for you to answer. So then the next one is to head into this conscious actions that I said. So to be aware and say, like, okay, this is what's truly going to help me. So whatever you choose, do it without judgment, make it your own decision and own it. Really say, I choose to react in this certain way. I choose to do this. Even if the decision eventually is, I choose to eat chocolate in this moment, or I choose to eat a piece of cake in this moment, because this is truly what I need right now and it will make me feel good, not only in this moment, but also 1 hour from now, 5 hours from now. Next morning when I wake up and I look back at this moment, this was the best decision that I could make. Then I will be the last one to say that you cannot have that piece of chocolate or that piece of cake or whatever is your favorite food. Then think back and reflect. Like I said before, reflecting, evaluating is super important because sometimes in the end you think, was actually not really what I wanted. It was not the best choice. So what can I do different next time? Why was it that I chose this? Was I maybe not really honest to myself and what I needed? Was I maybe sabotaging myself? Or was it something else? Like, really approach this from a place of curiosity. And you can do this literally by how you talk to yourself. I always say this to my clients, is instead of saying, oh, why did I do this? Or you're always doing it wrong. Like that doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound nice. But if you say like, okay, that didn't go the way I wanted it. What can I do different next time? Like that's way more how you would approach it to a friend, for example, or a family member. If they would come to you with something that they're facing and it's difficult, that you say like, hey, okay, how does it make you feel? What could you do different next time? This is how you also want to approach yourself. If you have a different time with naming your feelings, we have this wheel of emotions, which is also placed in the handout, where you can go from the more like basic emotions and then it goes out into this, how would I say? I cannot find the English word, but let's say now this circle, this wheel, to make it more specific so that you understand better what is it that I'm feeling, where is it coming from, and what do I need to take care of this, to nurture this. And then I said it before, understanding what you're feeling can also be this physical part of, am I feeling physical hunger or maybe more mental hunger or head hunger, how we call it. There are all different types of hunger. Can also be, sometimes we talk about hunger like out of restriction, which I explained before, right? It's a sort of need for food just because you restrict yourself. But here I give 2 examples of how you can distinguish head hunger from physical hunger. This one is also explained more and given as a handout in the group session about intuitive and mindful eating. So I'm only going to show it here shortly. If you want to know more about this, join that session. And then to end up with like the need that we have and how we can react to it, here are some emotion regulation tools that you could apply. This can be different for everyone and for each and every situation. So maybe one day you feel that when you're frustrated or you have a lot of tension, you need to shake it off or you need to dance or even scream. And I put it into brackets, like into a pillow, because maybe you don't want to do that with people around. Or you live somewhere near, like in a forest, then you can go outside, get into nature, like the last one, scream it out and release some of that tension. And also, of course, we want to stimulate the production of those happy hormones that we try to do with nutrition, but there's a lot of other different ways that cost a little bit more effort, right? If you walk, if you go for a run, if you dance, it takes some time for those hormones to release, but they can definitely have the same effect. And being aware of that, you can fill your toolbox, right, of emotion regulation with all of these different things. And nutrition, yes, can be one of them, but not the only one, right? So it's about filling that box with more of these tools that we can apply. I want to end today with a quote that I've heard from a fellow dietitian, and which I fully agree with, is no amount of food will ever satisfy you when you were never truly hungry to begin with. I want to thank you all. I'm super curious for the takeaways from today, from this session. And soon we will dive into the Q&A, which I'm very curious of what your questions are.
Yes, Roos, thank you so much for this session and for all of this information about what to do about emotional eating habits. I think on the one hand, very logical to try and take a moment and to pause before eating something and to see, okay, what is really underneath this and what is driving this decision. And at the same time, also so incredibly hard, I think.
Super difficult. I definitely agree. I always say, like, actually the solution is super simple, but really doing it, it takes time and effort. That's why I really said, like, okay, make time, make space and create energy, or give yourself some energy to work on this, because sitting with your emotions is really tough, especially when you're not used to it. It's hard work. So definitely.
I think that's a great starting point to recognize that it's hard, but that it gets better over time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's dive into the questions that came in today.
I'm super curious.
The most popular question that was asked today was one by Abigail, and she asks, how do you distinguish between emotional eating and disordered eating? And when is it best to consult a specialist?
I need a second to think about this one, because disordered eating has a lot of different ways to show itself. And I think if you're doubting, because I cannot give like one short answer now that fully covers it. So I think if you already have this question, to just consult a specialist, a dietitian, or your GP, to have a one-on-one to see, like, what are your behaviors, what are you doing, what is normal, what is maybe abnormal. I find it really hard to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was also more about like eating disorder. So I think it's good to recognize that this session is really aimed at providing like a basic understanding of the drivers behind emotional eating. But if you have very specific questions about really disordered eating or eating disorders themselves, then it's best to do that one-on-one with a specialist.
I now come with maybe a good tool to a starting point. I always say, if you feel anxiety around food, so if you feel tension, about certain thoughts that you have about food. You try to control it in a certain way that feels obsessive, that doesn't feel good to you, right? It's constantly in your mind. You're constantly thinking about food, and it already feels like maybe this is not right. I think you have to take those thoughts really serious. And you're always free to consult either your GP or someone here at OpenUp. It's very low threshold. So don't be worried straight away, but it's always good to share these thoughts and see what comes out of that. But I think that is a good starting point to check in with yourself. Do I feel tension? Because within a healthy relationship with food, you should not feel tension around food. It should feel light, pleasant, relaxed. And let's say emotional eating, right, also doesn't feel nice. It can also come with feelings of guilt or sadness or blame. That doesn't have to mean directly that you have an eating disorder. It is a part of maybe disordered eating behavior, but it doesn't have to mean that it's an eating disorder straight away. Like I said before, it can be part of it. So yeah, I think again, conclusion, it's good to just share these thoughts, check in with yourself. How am I feeling? And if you're not feeling nice, like I said in the simplest word, it's good to have a conversation about it and see how it's impacting you and if there's some change needed there.
Yeah, I see that Abigail also said, she asks, as it is important to make this disclaimer that no mention was made on this, to understand that it is triggering for those with disordered eating. So thank you also for asking it, and that we could explain it in this way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then the next question is from Anna, and she says, how to find a middle ground between restricting versus falling into emotional eating. So if I want to eat more healthy, improve my fitness, and lose some weight, it leads to restriction. But I also want to free myself from emotional eating patterns.
Can you repeat it once more?
Yes. So how to find the middle ground between restricting versus falling into emotional eating. So basically, creating better habits as well.
So the middle ground between restriction and emotional eating. Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it. I think there it has to do with the intention from which you do it. So this, I always, when I explain this, it maybe sounds a bit more vague, but it's really about the checking in with how it's making you feel. If you restrict from a place where you want to take care of yourself, you want to make a right decision, it's because you want to feel good, right? So you go to the gym because you feel good, instead of, for example, you go to the gym to change your body in a certain way because then you think you will be more worthy as a person, right? That's a completely different intention with which you do it. And the same goes for nutrition. If you restrict certain foods or say to yourself, like, hey, okay, I want to limit my sugar intake a bit because I know it makes me feel better. And I believe that when I do that, it's more healthy for me. That is different from I'm not allowed to have sugar because it is bad. So there it is a thin line and a gentle difference, I would say. And this all comes back to the simplest feeling of like, do I feel tension when I make this restriction? Or do I feel relaxed around it? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's a very nuanced way also of looking at it. And okay, what is really my intention when I'm doing this? Am I doing this to restrict myself, to kind of damage myself in a way, or is it something that that helps me grow? And,
and I think to give a personal example that maybe gives some insight as well. Like I dealt with disordered eating behavior myself as well, like years and years and years ago, almost 10 years ago. And for me, now I also have some limitations. I also have some restrictions, but this is coming from a healthy standpoint, what I just explained, right? I still go to the gym. I still make certain decisions within food that I maybe decide to like, okay, I crave this brownie right now, but I'm not going to do that, right? I'm restricting myself from having that brownie. Well, I really enjoy it and I love to eat that. But it doesn't come with any tension. I don't feel that I'm holding myself back from something. It's just like, hey, okay, this feels like a good decision. I feel chill about it. And there's not some secret anxiety in the back. Well, in the past it was completely different. Then it would be like, I have to go to the gym. I need to do this because otherwise, and then this negative thoughts would come in my mind with all the repercussions that I thought that would happen after that. So yeah, it really comes back to that point. Do you feel tension with your decision, or does it support you and makes you feel relaxed and happy and good in your body? So that's really that connection with your mind and body that we want to be very cautious of.
Yeah, clear. Thank you. Then there was also a question by Maurits, and he asks how to deal with the feelings of guilt and shame.
I think first of all, it's important to not go into this vicious cycle of blaming yourself that you're blaming yourself, or feeling guilty that you're feeling guilty. So it's actually the same part, right? You acknowledge that you have those feelings. So there's no right or wrong. We really have to just observe them, take them as they are, because this will probably never really disappear, right? So the goal is not to not have those feelings. You're completely allowed to have them, but then what you do with them is more important. So what happens afterwards? So instead of really sitting with those feelings, it's again actually also part of that method, right? Sitting with it like, hey, okay, I know this. That's maybe a good one. Instead of saying I'm feeling guilty, so I notice that I'm feeling guilty, or I notice that I'm blaming myself for having this piece of food or cake or whatever. And then just sitting with that emotion again, with that feeling. And then trying to tell yourself, like, okay, I know that this is not helpful for me, because usually those type of feelings are not helpful for us when we shame ourselves, when we feel guilt. So then you take a step forward. Okay, this is not helping me. What kind of thoughts, what type of affirmations, mantras, however you want to call it, are going to be supportive of me and will help me move forward? And this also brings me to the point that if you're going to practice with certain exercises that I give here or in other group sessions, it's never about doing the right thing or being good. It's all about practice, about feeling like, hey, what is working for me? Again, applying that self-compassion, that if it doesn't work, instead of being down about it, acknowledging that, like, okay, this is not nice. I don't feel nice about it. I would love to see it differently, but how can I approach it in a different way? There's no right or wrong in this. It's just experiencing, exploring, observing, and then changing your approach to hopefully go in a more, in a better direction, in a direction that you can feel more relaxed. That you can feel more relaxed.
Yeah. Thank you. Then we're already going into the last question of today, and that's one by Aravind. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Who says, I agree it's very hard to change the habit of what you're used to and try to create a new one. But creating one is one thing and maintaining is the other. How do you ensure you maintain the new habit? How do you stay accountable? And in case you deviate, how do you handle it?
I think the last one touches on what I said before, right? If you deviate, how do you change? So it's good to see if the method works for you, if you tried it out and if it works for you, because I just gave one example now, right, of the if-then method, but there are many more ways to build in a new habit. So it's not, again, there's not just one solution, not just one way. This is a method that I created, but there's way more ways to do this. Also, to circle back indeed with if we talk about disordered eating behavior, right? There's not one thing that works, and I think even that it might be a sensible topic for some people. These sessions are mostly created to create awareness, right? Not to say like, oh, you have to do it this way or this is the right thing to do it, but to see like, hey, where are you at? And hopefully it sheds some light on those feelings. I know I diverted a bit, but what was the first part of the question?
If you create a new habit, how do you maintain it and how make sure that you keep up with it?
Okay. How do you maintain it? Yeah, this is usually just repetition. So I know that there's some science that says like, oh, if you do it for 21 days, then it's ingrained and then it's a habit. But what I've heard from recent research and from habit researchers, it's that it's more about how often you do it and that you're being consistent. So instead of having one big chunk of 1 hour of doing something, you can better split it in, let's say, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and just do it on a continuous basis. And then maybe for some people it's already in 21 days, maybe you need 3 months, but it's all about continuing, like being consistent with that. And it can also help sometimes to really have fixed days. I think with this with this emotional eating, it's a bit more difficult. Let's say if you want to build a habit of going to the gym, you can really say like, okay, on Monday, on Wednesday, on Friday, I go to the gym and be consistent with that. With emotional eating, breaking that habit, it can be multifaceted, right? And in different moments of the day. So I think you have to approach each of these situations by itself. And then with that, repeat it, and don't give up. Like I said before, I've struggled with disordered eating as well in the past. It took me years, like first months and years. And it doesn't mean like, oh, I started at one point and then after 7 years, there was just recovery or it was completely over. Like it's a continuum, and it goes in waves, and it goes up and down. In some moments you really feel in control, in other moments maybe you have some step backs. I think it's mostly about just continuing. Again, like I said, don't see it as something right or wrong, just trying out, seeing what works for you. And of course today it's half an hour, right? We discuss a lot of things, but we also didn't discuss a lot of things. So there's a lot more to say. Those are really things I think that are important to discuss with one-on-one with a professional, either with a dietitian or with another caregiver or medical professional, to see what is possible.
Yeah. Thank you. And on that note, I want to end the session as well. I've also listed the resources in the chat. So what you can do if you would like to have more information about your specific situation, you can book a one-on-one through my OpenUp. But also we have listed in the handout the exercise here that was named in this session. Plus we also offer a group session that's about mindful eating. So really about slowing down and improving your relationship with what you have in front of you in terms of food. So feel free to also check that out. Without further ado, I want to thank everyone here for being here. We also host another masterclass tomorrow, if you're keen to join that, which is about a completely different topic. It's about financial well-being. But if you have questions around that, feel free also to sign up for that. The link will be here in the session as well. And I would really want to thank you all for coming. Thank you, Roos, for all the insights.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.